Hello again. I'm Ralph Boehm, your Litchfield rep, and back with us is Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica Leon from Derry. I've been with you a few times.
Right, so this is our first show, my first show anyway, since November 3rd, so it's been a couple of months, but I just hope everybody's had a good Christmas and starting a Happy New Year. So this past week, on the 3rd and 4th, we spent the days voting on retained bills. Now, unlike the U.S. Congress, we have to vote on, the whole House has to vote on every bill that's been put in. And last year was something over 1,000 bills. And this year there's already 800 something. Yeah. A lot of those bills were bills that were tabled. But anyway, so every bill has to be voted on. So the retained bills are bills that committees held because they wanted to do more work on them or for other reasons with like, let's not do it this year. But
Let's wait till an election year.
I know. So, and some of the bills you're waiting to see what maybe the Senate is going to do and those kind of things. So we had a lot of retained bills this year. You know how many?
I'm not sure how many, but I think 60 something came to the floor, and there were, I think it might have been close to 180 retained bills, with about 2/3 of them on the consent calendar.
Right, which was lucky.
Yeah.
The consent calendar is you vote once for all the bills, except they took off 5 of them.
Yes.
But anyway, but that was so. So we'll go over some of the bills. First bill in criminal justice, SB 470. That was a Senate bill which they retained, and that's. You want to?
So last year there was a bill passed to legalize fentanyl test strips and test strips for tranq. That went into effect in October of last year, but oddly enough, Amazon still won't sell them to New Hampshire. We need to fix that so people can check what they or others around them may make the poor choice to use. So this bill is mostly about harm reduction and about testing. So harm reduction sounds great on the surface, but you head out to San Francisco and you see a big billboard with somebody injecting and using with other people, and it says, if you're going to use in a safe space with friends. And then it says San Francisco harm reduction. So they included an amendment, the language in there saying that it takes care basically of any consequences of drug use and anything that leads up to drug use. So since you might be homeless and then use drugs, does that mean we're gonna buy houses for people? Honestly, as far as I'm concerned, the reason you shouldn't use drugs is because, especially hard drugs, heroin will destroy your life and kill you. Right. Same with meth. I mean, why should it be why is the law the prevailing thing when you're talking about the fact that you've basically given up your life in order to use heroin or meth? Yeah. So the idea of taking away the natural consequences is just going to make more users who are kind of a permanent underclass because it's still illegal. And so you're going to have a conviction. You're going to be a criminal, but they're going to coddle you and give you all of these things to make it good, but you can't really do much. You know, it's kind of the worst of both worlds. If you are really, really anti-drug, like I know you are, Ralph, and you want to have everything illegal, it's really bad because it opens up a certain amount of drugs to test for, and that's more than the lethal dose of carfentanil and fentanyl, just because they have it across all drug classes. And then on the other hand, for people who think that the natural consequences should be the reason you don't use drugs, all this does is gets rid of those and just keeps it illegal. So unfortunately, it passed the House, and unfortunately, it's probably going to pass the Senate, but I think it's really bad policy for New Hampshire.
Was this amended by the House?
Actually, it was amended by the House.
So the Senate's got to agree with the amendment.
But the amendment, I don't think, was that different, so it's quite possible that they'll just concur and send it to the governor. Maybe somebody can tell him that we shouldn't make it easy to be a drug user in New Hampshire. Maybe he should veto it.
But what I've heard, too, in the testimony that somebody had said, the test strips aren't sensitive enough for low amounts of fentanyl, which is enough to
Well, and so that's one of the reasons why this opens up things like having a mass spectrometer and all sorts of crazy testing equipment. But it's not like you can have an independent person operating that. Right. So it's either the government or somebody contracting through the government as a harm reduction. So either way, you're into the system, you're on the drug plantation, and it really doesn't do anything to free people of that problem.
Yeah, on drug thing, I've always been, if somebody wants to do drugs, whatnot, they should be, but don't cause me a problem. Mm-hmm. And that's what the problem is. I
Yes.
mean, it's costing me money, but for all these people doing drugs.
And this
how
one-
much money are we spending a year on Narcan? Taxes.
A huge amount. I don't know the number, but it's good that it's around because I know a lot of people, because somebody had it, they're still alive and they shouldn't have, and they were in a situation where they shouldn't have encountered fentanyl
Right.
with what they were doing. But still, I mean, you're talking about offloading all the cost of using drugs, the financial cost to all the taxpayers who aren't using drugs. It's just
Right.
it's just bad policy.
Right. Okay, then in education, we had HB 628. This is another bill eating away at education freedom accounts. I mean, some people don't like it. They want to do away with it. You have to force your kid to go to public school because the teachers' unions are spending all this money. So anyway, this bill says all education service providers that accept public money, like E of A money, have to have a background check. So, Erica, you homeschool your students. That means you would have to have a criminal background check.
Well, what it means that if my friend's kid who has an EFA comes over, and let's say I buy a science project and he buys a science project, and I'm supervising doing that, even if their parent is with us, I'd have to have a criminal background check. So my kids are in the first Lego League, the robotics league, and they had a competition out in Merrimack. There were almost all of the teams who were waiting over 2 months for background checks because the state's so backlogged. So you're going to make it so my kids' homeschool kickball league, if you have to pay $5 for pennies so you know which
Yeah.
team you are, needs background checks. That's just crazy. It was put in by people who don't trust parents
Right.
and have always said that parents can't be trusted with their
Right.
own children.
Luckily, that failed, 195 to 178. The thing is, and the argument was private school. Hey, no, every private school has done background checks. They're stupid not to. They don't want to get sued, so they all do background checks. So, I mean, and it's up to you also. Hey, is that person background check? I mean, but for homeschoolers, this would force homeschoolers, parents, to have criminal background checks.
And what's next after that? Force background checks for babysitters? Well, we know that they don't want it in the libraries because they fought for background checks in libraries.
Right.
And you don't need one to work there or volunteer there.
Yeah. Okay, on election law, HB 115, this was my amendment to a bill, because it was retained from last year because they didn't want to do it. Anyway, so I put an amendment in for this year to move the primary, this is the state primary, to the third Tuesday in August from the second Tuesday in September. One of the problems is that the 45-day federal limit between the primary and printing the ballots for the election, so they have to go out in the mail. So and right now, we're running a real risk with it being the second Tuesday in September because of people say if they want a recount, or the affidavit check, and those kind of things could be against federal law. So the Secretary of State wants to move it to August, which was fine, which we tried to do 2 years ago, but the governor vetoed it because the then Secretary of State didn't want it. Okay, now the Secretary of State is for it, but that's the only thing for this coming election that will work. Everything else stays the same. Your filing is still in June, but the primary will be in August. Now, if they want to change it for the next one to June, which I don't like, but some people do.
I do.
But anyway, June, I mean, that means filing in March, and Anyway, we can spend all day arguing that.
Absolutely. And that's what we do in the House.
But anyway, my amendment, it passed the committee 15-5 and then 13-7 for the whole bill. So it was really a bipartisan bill. And actually passed 281 to 82. I think that's the biggest majority we had. No, there was a couple others.
Yeah.
There were a couple others.
But it was one of the biggest wins of the day.
Biggest majority. Also, two bills. I mean, this was like, I was on election law in 2005-06. And then I was on education after that. Now this year I'm back on election law. And HB 345 and HB 350, ranked choice voting, I'm going deja vu all over again. because it's been going on and on and on. Now, for those that have heard about it, ranked choice voting means, let's say there's 5 people running in the primary, running for office, okay? Running for, say, 2 seats. Okay, so rather than just saying, I want this person and this person, say in the primary, no, I want this person as number 1, this person is number 2, this person is number 3, this person is number 4. Now, that gets confusing because the way they rank, like 2nd, 3rd, and 4th places, could override things. I mean, especially in New Hampshire where we have
well, in Derry, we have 10 state reps.
Right.
So sometimes we have as many as 20 people in the primary.
Right. So
and ranked choice for
how
20
wide did your ballot have to be? I mean, and especially in districts where there's multiple towns in a district, when it's also very confusing. Also makes more bad voting because people say, okay, did I already do a number 1? No, I'll do number. So that makes it a bad ballot.
And if you skip one of the numbers, doesn't it get thrown out past there?
No, you only have to do like 1 or 2.
But if you skip 3 and then go to 4.
Maybe.
I heard some testimony about that, but this isn't my specialty. I know it wouldn't work in Derry, so I stay away from it.
Right. And the same way, look at the presidential primary. There's 25 people on the ballot for coming up in the next couple of weeks. In 18 days.
Yes. January 23rd.
So remember, how wide will that ballot have to be for 25? Come on. So luckily, both of those bills failed. And I mean, but they'll be back again. I mean, they, like I said, it's been there ever since. I mean, they give arguments. Well, it's Alaska does it. Australia's been doing it. Now, the big difference in Australia is you have to vote. You don't have a choice. Okay? You get fined if you don't vote. So it's a little bit different. Alaska, when somebody was there, asked one of the reps in Alaska at one of the meetings, how did this approve? It was a referendum. In other words, like Massachusetts, they had the people vote for laws. Luckily, we don't do that in New Hampshire. But we said, somebody recommended one, we should have if a law passes that you don't want, you should maybe referend it so you can kill it. But, so anyway, both of the ranked choice failed. Also, in election law, HB 447, the voting machines we have, which are perfect, they work, but they're end of life. The manufacturer is not making parts for them anymore. They're not being made, so it's kind of hard to, fix them and get parts for them or anything. So the 2 new machines being offered that will be placed, they'll use the same ballots and whatnot, so everything's the same. They also take pictures of the ballot, so it'd be easier to do checks on them. And they work. The problem is, since the Secretary of State is saying, hey, we got these new machines and we need the thing, in around 2000, Congress passed the Help America Vote Act. Okay, and they gave states money, a lot of money. And I think New Hampshire, we got like $20 million. Okay, how many years ago? 20-some years ago. Because again, I remember discussing this in 05, 06 when I was on election law. The Secretary of State has still got 13 million of that 20 million.
Wow.
So we voted to, there's one, 311 to 62. That was a high one. Mm-hmm. To have use the Secretary of State to replace the machines. Now, just to replace the machines, not give machines to people that don't have them, which was one of the arguments that one group said, but to replace existing machines. And that's only going to be a couple of $1 million out of that 13 million they still have. They making more than that on the interest on it. So but the Secretary is way against it because he wants to keep his pocket of money. And so was the Senate, unfortunately. So, but with that count of 311 to 62, hopefully maybe convince them. Okay.
Yeah, so on this next one in finance, House
Yeah.
Bill 620, it had a couple things in it. It had, actually, I was thinking about the Medicaid to schools one. I apologize, I'll let you do this one, the early learning
You
kindergarten.
can do that one too. Oh, this one is establish an early learning program. I mean, for pre-kindergarten. Like we don't have enough money for anything else, so let's spend money on pre-kindergarten. Yeah. Luckily, that was killed 188 to 185. You can see people still want to spend money on indoctrinating your children at an early age. Okay.
Yes.
So
So House Bill 601 was the one that was about state participation in the Medicaid direct certification for free and reduced lunch. So there's a couple things going on there. There was some money to go pay the schools for the lunches. That was included in the budget. So that language was in this bill, but we weren't really voting on it because that money was already spent. But the biggest thing this would do is it would forcibly out parents that are lower income and let the schools know that. You know, if you're not asking for help, that's your own personal information.
Right.
And nobody should be forced to disclose how much they make, how much or how little they make. So that was one big reason why a lot of people were opposed to it. There's also the issue of then signing kids up for Medicaid in schools because they can give some treatments without consent. So there are some really good reasons to vote against it. It was the tightest vote of the day, 189 to 188, with the speaker voting to break the tie when Deputy Speaker was holding the gavel.
So, I mean, we had a couple of close ones, but most of it.
Yeah. And then we get to Health and Human Services, my committee, that I expected to be a lot closer than it was. So we had a couple of bills. We had House Bill 264. Right now, if you want to change the gender on your birth certificate, you need to go to court and to a judge, and you need to prove that you're changing it. That's the same as if you've adopted a kid and you want to change the parent on the birth certificate. Just about everything that happens late needs to go in front of a judge. This would have streamlined it and allowed any healthcare provider to do that. You know, these are important records, and they're not the thing that people pull out every day to prove who they are. It just seemed it was one of those areas where we thought that it was important just to keep the process because, you know, there's a lot of steps involved, and going to court for this is a reasonable step to protect people's data.
Right, and we know cases where somebody wants to change it, then they change it, then they want to change back. I mean, wait a minute. This is an historical record, you know, just like where you were born and when you were born, you know.
Yeah, and that's why they were created, so that we'd be able to know more about their population.
Right.
So then our next bill that we had was House Bill 368. That was basically to be a sanctuary state for gender procedures for minors. There's some states like Texas that have made it illegal to take your kid out of state for gender care. I mean, we'll talk about our next bill, but I think impacting what people do when they leave their state is the wrong thing to do. But also putting in laws saying that you won't answer any subpoenas for kids' medical records if there's transgender care. You know, it actually goes a lot further than just that, because there's plenty of times when there's a parental abduction. There's parents who will take their kid, leave the state, not just for transgender care. There's all sorts of reasons. And so if you have a custody issue and you have a parent that's taking their kid, you know, it's quite possible that, you know, it's just one of those areas where there's unintended consequences. And so that one was defeated 190 to 185. So now comes the big one, House Bill 619. In its original form, it was really large and broad-reaching, and a lot of people that are talking about this bill in the media still think that it's that original bill. It's not. We amended it down to be a very, very focused bill. So I have a nice little cheat sheet that I've been putting out to people. Basically, this bill says wait until 18, and you can find information about this at nhwaitsuntil18.com. So what does this bill do? It pauses these surgeries until age 18. It puts the limits on doctors and not on kids and their parents. And this is because kids aren't small adults, and kids with suppressed puberty really start from a different point medically than an adult who's gone through natural puberty and all of this other development. You're talking about these surgeries and you're starting at a different point. They need to be studied differently. And the problem is there's no data on it, because these procedures were against guidelines until 16 months ago. And so there are no data on how to do it safely.
Right.
And this holds transgender care to the same standards as any other medical procedure. This bill, you wouldn't be able to have your doctor refer you out to a center of excellence, but parents know how to reach out to support networks. If you wanted to go to whatever place is starting to do this in San Francisco or down to Boston Children's, there's nothing in our law that prevents a family from going, but we're just saying right now the science isn't there.
Right.
We don't have any data. And if you're going to do a surgery, you want to be at a high volume place.
Right.
You don't want to be at a place that's doing one or two of these procedures. You want to be at the place where they're doing the most of them so you have your best outcome.
Right.
So, yeah.
And there are cases where young girls, and I've met one of them and talked to her, and actually suing in California with a couple of them, where girl at, say, I think she was like 12 years old when she told her parents she wanted to be a boy. Okay? So the parents sort of agreed with her.
They went along with her.
Went along
Yes.
with it. She's 12. Anyway, so she went through, it was...
Yeah, she went through puberty blockers, and then in
Right.
school a boy grabbed her breast and she was told, well, you're not a girl, so what does it matter? So then she had a mastectomy.
Right,
So,
after binding,
Yeah.
which the first step, then she had a
Yeah.
mastectomy, then she had other surgery, and then when she turns 18, she said, oh no, really, I really want to be a girl.
Yeah.
So the problem is, the binding caused chest problems because the rib
But-
cage
yeah.
is messed up.
But actually, none of that is actually in this bill. So this bill doesn't include puberty blockers or hormones, and it doesn't even include mastectomy. We have to look at where we are in New Hampshire, and all this does is it says we can't do an experimental
Right.
procedure
Yeah.
on kids, especially because you look at this backlash that's happening.
Oh, yeah.
They're saying that this is life-saving care, but literally there are no data. You search
Right.
for clinical trials, and there's nothing.
Right.
So a parent can't give informed consent. So basically what we're doing is giving a pause saying wait until 18.
Right.
And like I said, I'm sure you're going to see more about this in the media. You can go to New Hampshire waitsuntil18.com or ask me about it.
Right, and I've umpired girls softball for a number of years, and the same girls maybe from 10-year-olds to 16-year-olds. And all of a sudden you see these girls being tomboys, getting dirty and everything else, and their hands are, and then one year I come back and, where's Mary? Oh, there she is. She's now a princess. A little princess, doesn't know how to run anymore. You know what I mean? It's the same, and the same thing happens with boys. Look at young boys in Little League. They're picking flowers out in the,
So, and I think the craziest thing about this was when we drafted the bill, conceptually, a lot of the Democrats on our committee said, no, these surgeries shouldn't happen in kids. And there were 21 Democrats who voted for the amendment to narrow it down. And after one of the people spoke on the amendment, there was a shouting match in the ante room
Right.
because the trans activists in the House were attacking the Democrats who had supported it. We ended up having 12 Democrats who understood that there's no data, it's not safe. There's nothing to say it's safe, and there's nothing to say that it isn't. So it's experimental. So we had 12 Democrats that stood for what's right in this pause. And I think that, and against a lot of bullying, quite honestly.
Right.
So I think that reaching out to them and saying thank you is definitely in order, because this is one of the times where they stood up to a big pressing wave. And
Right.
there's a lot of Democrats out there that vote that also understand that these genital surgeries on kids are a step too far.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the problem. There's no way I could be a Democrat because of all the bullying done. I go against leadership all the time, which I did on one of these bills. Anyway, but the quote of the day numerous times was trust the parent. Now we got to bring that back up when it comes to education, because then you can't trust the parent.
Yeah.
Okay, judiciary, another
Yes.
one on this.
So this was another one, and this one is actually back in play. So this is House Bill 396, and this says that biological sex can, but doesn't need to be a reason to differentiate between people in bathroom facilities and bathing facilities, in sports where there's actually a gender difference in performance, and in correctional facilities. The correctional facilities are a huge thing. You have people in the women's prison impregnating other women's prisoners in some states. And unless we have the option to do that, you can't really remove somebody.
Right.
And this still leaves the option to view people individually and say, you know what, Ralph? You're good. You're good.
Well-
You're a very convincing woman.
The thing.
And also, but not just a convincing woman, but you truly are living as a woman. You're truly doing that. That's truly expressing who you are, as opposed to the couple charlatans that are causing problems, like happened down in Loudoun County, Virginia.
But-
if you
oh,
didn't
yeah.
have a policy, you can't keep that
Right,
kid
yeah,
who's
the-
twice raped girls in the bathroom.
Right, the school board
out.
moves them to another school and he does it again.
And without this policy, you couldn't keep that kid out.
Right.
So this isn't saying you have to, it's just saying that you can.
Mm.
But it's been pulled for reconsideration, so we'll be voting on that again next time
Okay.
we come back.
Yeah. So a few others here before we
Oh.
run out of time. Moving some new employees into the defined contribution program that was indefinitely postponed, which was a bad, that shouldn't be allowed. You can't do it anyway.
It's just, well,
I
moving
mean,
the
no,
new
for
peop-
indefinitely postponed, but the bad
yeah,
choice.
yeah, it's like salting the earth. It's just, it's an offensive thing to do. It's, yes.
Also, a municipal and county, a bill for default budget reductions. That got killed 188 to 184. Unfortunately, it was a good bill. Unfortunately, a lot of reps do not understand that SB2 towns work because a lot of towns aren't SB2 towns. So it's confusing, and also a lot of people on the municipal county committee don't know how it works. So that was it was a good bill, but unfortunately, it was lost by 5 votes. And there was another one. Didn't you bring up one in municipal county?
No, I
I
didn't bring
missed
up
it?
another one.
Okay.
So
Okay, and that's,
you take 30 seconds on your best bill coming up in the air. I'll take 30 seconds on my best bill, and then we'll close out.
okay. Yeah, so new bills that we put in for this year. Okay, I had one, HB 1566, and that says the state police can be used to look at town police issues. For example, this comes up from a vehicle accident in Derry. Okay.
My town.
And where two people on a motorcycle got killed in an accident. The people first on the scene said the driver of the car was at fault. The police were saying no, the motorcycle was at fault. So it was going back and forth, and ended up after the insurance, nobody was at fault. The problem is, Derry was getting a lot of flack on it, the police department's getting a lot of flack. So this bill, what it allows is the county attorney, the governing body, like the town council, or the county sheriff, can get the attorney general to get the state police to investigate. And what I've understood, the state police have a unit that does that. For example, if that happened in Litchfield, the state police would investigate because town of Litchfield doesn't, not a big enough police department, don't have their own investigation unit. Also for other cases too, not just, for example, we had a case in Litchfield many years ago when I was a selectman where a department head was stealing money from, and couldn't get the police to investigate because the police chief was having an affair with that woman. So we couldn't get the police to investigate, so that would be another case. So
Okay.
go ahead.
And then mine is on cannabis legalization. I actually chaired the committee at conference that had a study committee to see about a state-run model, because that's what Governor Sununu said that he favored. That ended up completely falling apart, because if the states were to run the stores either directly, then that could put all of the state's finances at risk for dealing drugs as a state, because it's still federally prohibited. The other one that they were working as a franchise model would make the state a franchisee and would make the state liable to so many different federal laws.
Right.
So I refiled a bill very similar to the one that had gone through the House last year. There's, I think, some really good improvements. There's actually some money into the housing. There's money for sewer extensions, because we need to make sure that as these revenues come in, there's some good ways to help out the communities that are involved. And it's one of those things that's all around us. You go to another state and see it, and it's all New Hampshire plates. The only people who aren't doing it are the ones who are the super rule followers and the people who have no interest in it.
Right.
So why not allow businesses in New Hampshire to flourish and flower? And why not make it so that people aren't, sort of feeling like they're hoarding and have to say, can I make it to Maine today? Or am I going to buy enough in Maine so I can make it? And let's just treat it like buying milk at the store or beer at the store. So. Now, that one is House Bill 1663. Sorry, that is House Bill 1633. It's lovely that I have some numbers very close together. And what number is your bill?
1566.
Okay.
And that's what I heard will be in a couple of weeks. So anyway, and that should end up for today, and hopefully maybe in a couple of weeks or whenever we have some more info, we'll
get back
come
in
back.
here.
So
Thank you.
have a good day.
Don't forget to vote January 23rd.
Right.